Hi, I'm Brian with YCH Hops, and I'm here out in the field today with Pat Smith of Loftus Ranches. Pat, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your family farm here?
Yeah, morning, Brian. So I'm fourth generation of our family here on the farm. My great-grandparents planted hops here just east of Yakima, Washington in 1932. So the 2017 harvest is our 86th hop harvest here.
Wow.
This morning we're standing out in a field of laurel hops. Laurel's a relatively new variety released a couple of years ago, an aroma variety. So what we will see behind us here in a moment is our field harvesting.
Awesome.
So the trellis is 18 feet tall, and the hops grow up string that we place out here in the spring. All the string is tied by hand, and then we hand train the hop vines to grow up that string. And so the hops will grow the full 18 feet in about 6 weeks. And then once they've reached the full height of the trellis, that's when they'll start actually the reproductive growth phase of their life cycle and start cone development. And the cones, of course, is what brewers are after.
Awesome. So what are we seeing behind us here?
So the tractor behind us is the bottom cutter. The bottom cutter, as true to its name, cuts the bottom of the hop plant from the base of the plant where the perennial root structure is. So now those vines are just hanging from the wires at the top of the trellis, and shortly we'll see a truck being pushed through the field by the top cutter. The top cutter is just cutting the top of the vines into the bed of the truck, and the truck that just passed us is taking those vines back to the field, or back to the picking machine, excuse me.
Oh yeah, no, awesome. And so I'm seeing there's a lot of cones on these here. I guess, could you give us an idea of like how much are you getting off each one of these vines, or maybe like pounds an acre?
Yeah, so laurel is a fairly good yielder. We'd be, probably somewhere around 2,000 to 2,400 pounds of dried hops per acre. That is just over 1 pound of dried hops per string, per vine. So behind us here, you now see the top cutter pushing the truck through the field, cutting the vines down into the back of the truck. We got 2 guys standing in the back of the truck helping to guide the vines into the truck. When the truck is full, the top cutter backs up, truck pulls out and heads back to the machine.
Oh, great.
And then the next truck pulls right in and just keep on going.
Nice, nice. Well, I guess from here, they're headed back to the picking facility, right?
Yeah.
You want to take
Absolutely.
us there?
Yeah, let's follow the truck.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right, so here we are. We just came out of the field. We're in your picking facility. Want to maybe give us a little bit about everything we're seeing kind of all around us here?
Yeah, absolutely. So when the trucks come in from the field carrying the vines, they pull into the machine here, into one of the unloading bays, and then the vines are unloaded from the truck by hand. They're hung onto hooks and then raised up overhead where they're staged to enter the main picker. Inside the main picker, it's essentially 2 curtains that have a bunch of wire fingers. Those fingers strip the hop and leaf material away from the main vine and then run into the machine for sorting. And the machine just sorts the hop from the leaf material based on the differences in physical characteristics between a hop and a leaf. The leaf material, all the vine material, the stems, all of that is taken off, chopped up, and sent to the waste stream. And so we take it, windrow it, compost it, and eventually use it back out in the field for fertility. The hop cones are taken across over to the kiln for drying.
Nice. And I see there's a lot of hops in here. I guess kind of what do you see as like the throughput, or how many hops are coming through this building?
Yeah, so in this building, throughout harvest, 22 hours a day, 7 days a week for about a month, we will average about 50 hop vines a minute throughput through this facility. So,
oh, very nice.
Yeah, about 1 a second, not quite.
Yeah, almost 1 a second. Great. Well, I guess from here, why don't we see where all the hop kilns are going and check out the kiln?
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks. All right, so here we are in your kiln. Tell us a little about what we're seeing behind us here.
Yeah, so from the picking machine, the green hops are conveyed over here to the kiln by these conveyors overhead. The hops are then dumped into the blue conveyor that's suspended from the ceiling, and it's just spreading the hops along the length of the kiln. The hops are laid at about just over 2 feet deep. And laid out in a nice even bed. Once that kiln is full, we'll turn on the burners. The burner is just a big fan with a propane fired burner head that heats the incoming air and dries the hops. So the hops come in, they're full of moisture so that we can store them and brewers can use them year round. We dry them down to the appropriate moisture level, and then we cool them down here before sending them over to the baling room.
Okay. I gotta say, we've had a nice cool morning, but it's kind of warm in here. What are the kind of the temperature ranges you normally have a kiln running at?
Yeah, so we finish the drying process at 125 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on variety and a number of other factors. But so it's safe to say about 130 degrees Fahrenheit would be the finishing temperature. But that temperature is modified throughout the drying process to get the performance and characteristics that we want.
Okay. And so once this bed gets full, how long do you think these hops are going to be in here for?
The length of the drying cycle is also dependent on variety. So different hop varieties have different cone structures and characteristics, but the drying process takes usually 7 to 10 hours, depending on those factors.
Okay, awesome. And so once you're done in here, where do we go from here?
From here, the hops are then pulled out of the kiln by the cloth that they sit on and sent over another series of conveyors over to the baling room where they're conditioned and prepared for baling.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Why don't we go check out the baling room then?
Let's do it.
All right, Pat, so tell us a little bit about where we are now.
So after the kiln, the hops come over here to the baling room for conditioning and baling. So on the left side of the room here, we've got the hops that have been picked and dried over the last, half a day or so. And on the right side of the room, we've got what we're baling today. So the hops stay in this building for about 24 hours on average. So each side of the room represents a day's worth of field harvest and drying. So in these piles, they're conditioning, and the moisture content of the hops is kind of equalizing. From there, we push the hops into a pick conveyor in the center of the building.
Okay.
The hops are then conveyed up above to a holding bin, which has 2 conveyors coming out of it, feeding weigh boxes, which feed the bale presses. So the weigh boxes automatically weigh out 100 pounds of dried hops at a time. Those hops are dumped into the bale presses. You see the bale press on the right here, the box coming up. The balers remove the burlap from the plunger, take a piece of burlap from the base of the baler, then they stitch with handheld sewing machines each side of the bale. From there, they'll lift the plunger up, kick the bale out onto a scale, weigh the bale, and then hand stitch the top and bottom. So each bale weighs about 200 pounds. So as I was mentioning before, 100 pounds gets weighed out at a time. It's a double press bale. So we press 100 pounds. The plunger, the kind of triangular piece that the guys are putting the burlap on right now, the plunger goes up, 100 pounds gets dumped in. That process happens twice while the balers are hand stitching the top and bottom of the bale. So the gentleman on the right here is prepping the head of the bale while the guy on the left is hand stitching. You can see him with the needle and the thread doing the stitch along the top. they'll flip the bale upside down, do the same thing on the other side.
Oh, that's very impressive.
Yeah, so that's happening on both sides. So the guys work in teams of 2. They can do each baler does about 25 bales per hour. So between the 2 presses, we'll do about 50 bales an hour at 200 pounds each. So about 10,000 pounds of hops an hour through this process.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So once they're done stitching them, then where do they kind of go from here?
So we stage them just temporarily here behind us, and then from here we've got on-farm cold storage. The bales will sit in cold storage overnight and then be loaded onto trucks to be shipped out to YCH tomorrow morning.
Awesome. And you got a truck loading up? Maybe we can go check that out as well?
Yeah, we'll go check it out right now.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're at the last stop here on the farm. Pat, you want to give us a little rundown of what we're seeing behind us here?
Yeah, so the bales that you see being loaded onto the truck have been stored overnight in our cold storage. The guys running the 2 forklifts that you see going back and forth are just pulling bales out of cold storage, putting them on the truck where they'll be hauled to YCH.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time today. It's always great to spend time with you. I appreciate your tour.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brad.
And we'll actually head over to YCH Hops now, and we'll see how bales are received in at YCH Hops processing facility. All right, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so the bales have left the farm, and here they're being received at YCH Hops. I'm here with Ken Mortensen. Ken, can you tell us a little bit of what we're seeing around us?
Yeah, guys are unloading the bales of hops from the flatbed behind us, and then we're doing our pre-storage quality check. So behind us, they're checking for moisture. We're taking core samples, which will go to customer selection, as well as lab analytical data. And then we're also putting on our bale numbers. And the other thing they're checking for is appearance and aroma.
Okay. And so when they're checking for moisture and things like that, what are they looking for?
We have a spec on our moisture. If we're too high or too low with that moisture, we will actually reject these bales and send them back to the farm. Hop bales have a tendency, if they're too dry or too hot, to warm up, and with the combustible oils in the hops, then there's a chance for internal combustion and a hop fire. So we don't want to store those in a warehouse with all of our other bales. We'll get those back to the farm so they can hospitalize them until they meet our spec and then bring them back to us.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. And I see there's a lot of commotion around here. It seems like they unloaded this truck pretty fast.
Yeah, these guys can get a truck unloaded and tested and put away within a half hour of this truck showing up. Time is really of the essence. Temperature, UV light, and oxygen are all detrimental to the quality of the hop. So we don't want them to sit out here in the sun for too long and bake. We want to get them right into cold storage and preserve that quality.
Awesome. And so is cold storage where they're going next?
Cold storage, they'll go into one of these warehouses that's stored at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. They'll be in the cold storage for a minimum of 3 days, so we can cool that temperature down even more before we begin processing.
Awesome. Well, why don't you go take me there and let's take a look at that.
Sounds good.
All right, Ken. Well, thanks for bringing me in here. Why don't you tell me a little bit about all these bales?
Yeah, we're inside of one of our cold storage units here in Sunnyside. At our Sunnyside location, we actually have 10 of these cold storage warehouses. The warehouses, like I mentioned earlier, at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. This is where we store all of our bales as well as our finished product, either in here or in our finished goods warehouse. But bales will reside in here for a minimum of 3 days before then we go on to our next processing step, which will either be type 90 pellets to go out to the brewers. We also send out whole cone hops. From there, we also have our cryogenically separated hop product line and our CO2 extract or our resinate line.
Nice. And how big is this warehouse itself?
This warehouse itself is about 15,000 square feet. We can house up to 2 million pounds of hop bales in this warehouse. So with 10 warehouses, we're roughly right around that 20 million pounds that we can house here in Sunnyside.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's a lot of hops.
Yeah. Well, you said from here, after a few days, they go over to be made into pellets. You want to show me that?
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, Ken, well, here we are in our pellet facility. I know for being in sales that pellets make up about 80 to 85% of our business, but can you tell me a little bit about how much can you get through this facility in a day?
Well, we have 2 processing lines in here and one up in Yakima. Each line, roughly, we can do about 3,500 pounds per hour. So on a good day, we're kicking out between 200 and 250,000 pounds of T90 hot pellets.
Wow, that's impressive. And so I see there's a lot of equipment here. I guess could you kind of walk me through a little bit about what we're all seeing here?
Yeah, on the front end, we start by putting our bales through a bale breaker. Basically what we're doing is breaking those bales up and getting them back into a single cone format. From there, the cones travel through our hammer mill, and at the hammer mill, we're breaking those cones up into a consistent powder. From there, the powder goes to a mix tank where we hold a set amount for a set amount of time and continue to blend that powder to get a consistent mix going into the pellets.
Okay.
From the mix tank, then we go into our pellet mill like the one behind us, and we're taking that powder and compressing it through a die and making a consistent density pellet. By putting it into the pellet form, we're conserving space, we're preserving quality, and we're making it into a user-friendly form for the brewers on the back end. From the pellet mill, then we go to our packaging line. Here we have a vertical form, fill, and seal, where they're automatically getting weighed, filled into the foils. The foil is a light-resistant package, and we're also nitrogen flushing this foil to remove any oxygen from that bag. Then it's sealed, we're checking the seals, and then putting them into our cardboard boxes, and then palletizing, and then from here, the pallets get taken over to our finished goods warehouse where they eventually will ship out up to our customers.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time and all the information on everything we're seeing here. Nice spending the day with you.
Anytime. It's been a pleasure.
I'm going to go check out where these boxes end up.
All right. Have a good trip.
All right. And so here we are at our Sunnyside FGX, which is our finished goods warehouse. Here's where all of our product is stored until customers place orders, and then it's shipped out from here. I appreciate you coming on the tour with us today, and thanks for your time. If you have any more questions or you're looking for more information, you can always visit our YCH Hops website. Thanks again, and until next time, have a good one. Happy brewing. Cheers.